Welcome to a new episode of Real People, Real Stories podcast. Thanks for joining to hear another inspiring real life story. I'm Rena, your host, and today my guest is Shaun from Florida. Shaun spent 2 decades in the Navy, serving in Iraq, East Africa, and across intelligence operations. After leaving the military, he kept pushing his limits, recently completing a ski trail run on Mount Kilimanjaro, and now training for his first Ironman with the team RWB to support veterans, despite never having done a triathlon before. In this episode, we will talk about the experiences and decisions that shaped Shaun's life, from his military service to the challenges he continues to take on. Hello, Shaun.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you, fine. Thanks again for joining. Your life sounds really exciting. A lot of going on, a lot of activities. Let's start from the beginning. You served in the Navy. As far as I understand, it was a few years back. So what moved you to join Army, and why exactly Navy and not something else?
Yeah, so I was lost young adult. I had grown up playing a lot of soccer and had an opportunity to play in college, chose not to. And to be honest, was kind of drifting with college and life and no real focus and discipline. And, I'm here in the United States, September 11th happens. And literally the next day I am on the phone, with recruiters. And I'm like, I don't know where there is, but I'm ready to go. Like, send me wherever there is. I know something's about to happen and I want to be a part of it. And so from there, I was a few short months later off to boot camp. Thought I would just do my 4 years, get involved, go fight whatever war was coming. And, I blinked my eyes and it's 20 years later and I'm retiring from the Navy.
So, oh wow, that's definitely a blink of an eye. So you just choose the Army to go to the Navy, yeah? That's how it was.
I mean, the way it works here in the United States is we can actually select the service. And so it really happened that, I did talk to the Army and the Navy. The Navy happened to have a recruiter that worked in intelligence, and that was something I was interested in. The Army didn't have anybody that worked in intelligence, didn't really know much about it. And to be honest, I was like doing some in-processing thing, and the movie Clear and Present Danger, I don't know if you remember it, really old Tom Clancy book, turned into a movie. And there's this scene at the very beginning where there's these drug dealers and they're on the phone, and, it cuts to this base in the United States, and the base picks it up and they start recording this phone call. And my recruiter just kind of nudged me and just kind of nodded up at the TV screen as this scene is playing out. And I was just like, done, I'm all in. Like that looks really cool. But, and the Navy guys telling me I can do stuff like that. So let's go do that.
That's interesting and very unusual recruitment process, yeah. I must say. But it worked. Years in the Navy, that's a lot. That's half of the life. How it felt after you came back, let's say, to the normal life, if I can say so.
Yeah, that was always an adjustment, right? Because everyone back home, while you're missed, right, life is going on. And kids are getting older. It's your spouse, your parents, they just kind of move on with their life as they should, right? And to be honest, it's pretty easy to be the one that deploys because you're there. You don't have anything else to do. You don't have to worry about taking the trash out. You don't have to worry about making dinner, picking up the kids. You're just there to do your job. And to come back and reintegrate, not just with the family, and you kind of have to get to know everyone again and see how they've grown and changed. And you have too. But then to just pick up and life again, right? To where those little things are going to happen. And, you can go to the store and kind of let your guard down. You don't have to be hyper vigilant all the time. I remember the first time I actually came back partway through my first deployment to Iraq. And my ex-wife and I, we took the kids and we went. We were living in Honolulu, Hawaii at the time, and there was this hotel where we could use the pool, but they would set off fireworks every Friday or Saturday night. And I remember that first firework went off, and I didn't see it go up. I just heard it, and I literally like rolled out of the pool chair onto the ground, thinking we were being attacked. And then just kind of looked around and realized like, nope, I'm in the United States. I'm safe. So it was always difficult to come back to home after being gone for so long.
Wow, that's definitely sounds very challenging. Did somebody help you to go through this period of time to make it easier, the adjustment, or you did it all by yourself?
So the U.S. military has gotten better about reintegration programs and different things like that. I'll say early on, my first few deployments, I struggled to come back, right? And used a lot of alcohol, kind of tried to bury the feelings, didn't really want to talk about things, and I struggled a lot. And I think on the outside, everything looked fairly normal, but on the inside, it was tough, right? And I had lost friends, I had seen some things, and like to try to understand, why am I the one that's home? Why is, my buddy, my battle not back here with me, things like that was difficult. As I got older, right, and I found my now wife, my second wife, I learned to open up a little bit. And I stopped drinking, and then I eventually found running as a way to kind of deal with this Really, to be quite honest, I traded one addiction for another. So I traded the running, or I traded the alcohol for the running, as a way for me to internally deal with things. So, and I have gone to some counseling, and, I've done some like very formal professional things, but I think, the two biggest things are just, my wife, who would be there, support me when I was making mistakes, when I was having problems, when I was struggling to stop drinking. She was always there for me. It wasn't easy for her. The times weren't always good. But she always stuck by me. And then just finding running and just being able to get out and do hard things and find a way to kind of, de-stress, and work through those things on my own, in my own head, out for hours on end by myself. That was really a turning point for me.
Thanks for sharing this, and I think that's very useful advice for anyone who is struggling with some addiction. Yeah, you're right. You can switch one to another, but the second one must be something healthier, like you choose running. It can be some other type of sport or hobby like knitting. I don't know. Good that you made this decision, and it's really helped as far as I understand, which is great. And that is probably how you decided to go to Mount Kilimanjaro and make the 75K run. That came out from this?
Yeah. So I had done a handful of races really here locally in Florida. I guess I did a half marathon in New York. But I hadn't run any of the ultra marathons, so anything beyond a marathon distance, outside of Florida, right? So everything was driving distance. It was local, it was close, it was easy. And I had been introduced to this American who was living in Tanzania who had this race series. And I saw he had posted, anyone is interested in coming out, I'll cover your race costs. I just ask that you promote the race. And I thought, well, hey, here's a really cool opportunity. To just, get the race fee covered, which can be quite expensive. But two, late in my Navy career, I did 2 deployments to East Africa. I was in like Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya area. I was there a little over a year total, between those 2 deployments. And I really looked at it, even though I had never gotten to Tanzania, I wasn't okay when I was over in East Africa with the Navy, right? Like personally, I was still dealing with all that stuff. I was struggling, thought I was over the drinking, and then I would backslide and all these different things. And I felt like I was in a really good place, when this opportunity to go to Tanzania came up. And I thought, how cool is this? Like, no, I can't go run an ultra in Mogadishu. It can't come completely full circle, but here is an opportunity to go to East Africa and go back in a much better way and do something, that I really enjoy and is healthy and, just kind of a full circle moment. So yeah, I applied and I was selected, and had the opportunity to go and do that.
That sounds amazing. Have you had any extra preparation before this run, or you felt like that's it, I am ready and let's go?
No, I was not ready at all. So, as you can, Mount Kilimanjaro, well, we certainly didn't summit. We got pretty high, 14,000 feet. I want to say that's about 3,000 kilometers. Sorry. I really need to look that up and have that conversion memorized, but I want to say it's around 3,000 meters. So we got it, we got up pretty high. The air got very thin. And if you know anything about Florida, if you've ever been here, it is very flat. It is extremely flat. And I've never done a mountain race. So I had to find a way to train both for running up and downhill, and then try to find a way to train for the altitude while living at sea level. So I was able to do a couple things. I got creative. I was doing bridges. So I would just run back and forth over a bridge for an hour or 2 hours. There was a parking garage close to a place I was working. And so I would go at lunch and run in this parking garage. The people that worked there that probably thought I was this absolute lunatic running through this parking garage. And then there was a park that used to be a landfill that I was able to get some hills and do stuff like that. The other thing that was really cool was I found some science behind training in heat and training at altitude being transferable. So I went out, I was like, hey, I may not have mountains in Florida, but I have heat. And so again, I was going out at lunch and I was wearing a hoodie, and it was, 30 degrees Celsius, over that, like it was very hot. And I would go out and I would run during these times. I even took the family once to that park. I had on pants, a hoodie, a winter jacket, the hood was up. Like I looked like an absolute lunatic again. My poor wife was there, probably completely embarrassed, but I was just trying to find ways. I even bought a cheap sauna off of Temu. It was like a tent with like an instant pot on the side of it. And, I'd work out and then I'd come and I'd get in the sauna. And I was just trying to find any little thing I could to simulate in any way, shape, or form the conditions I would be running on without having that available. And I can tell you, like, once we got up to altitude, I'm the only person that didn't get sick. Everyone I talked to, headaches, dizzy, nauseous. I saw a guy throw up. I was just a little bit slower, just like we all were, just like I was out for a lunch day run in Miami. And then, I really had to, at the end, there are cutoffs in these races. And I had to run harder than I've ever run at the end of a race. And the preparation of, running all of those hills or the bridges and the parking garages, like I could feel my muscles like they wanted to give out. But I had trained enough on that stuff, plus with doing some strength training, lifting, that like my body held up. And I was able to run really hard at the end of that race to make it before the cutoff and be an official finisher. So no, when I signed up for that, and I tend to do this, right? You kind of mentioned it with the Ironman at the beginning. I tend to sign up for things, whether it's physical, for work, or, it doesn't matter. I sign up for things and then I kind of look around the room and say, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this, but this looks really cool and I want to go figure it out.
That's a very adventurous motto of the life, and it can open doors to many, many adventures and new experiences. And your preparation definitely paid off. 5K, it's almost 2 marathons. The distance of one marathon is K.
Mm-hmm.
75, okay, minus 9 Ks, it's 2 marathons. And before this, you run only half marathon in New York, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. So how long it took you to run those 75K in the mountain, up and down hills?
Yeah. So I had run some ultra marathons before. So that wasn't my longest race, but certainly, again, never in the mountains. But it took me 13 hours, almost 13 and a half hours to finish the race.
That's half a day.
Yes.
Congratulations on accomplishing this challenge. Did they give any medal or something to remember it, at least?
Yes. No, I got a medal. Some great photos, some great video. They had a professional videographer out there. And so I was able to, see some of those moments. And then to be honest, really the coolest thing was my wife went with me as well. And like we made a vacation out of it. We left the kids with grandma and grandpa, and we had about 3-4 days to just be tourists. Did a safari, did this hike to a waterfall, and we got to make coffee with the local tribe. And so just these different things in Tanzania. And like I said, it was just such a cool full circle moment for me to like, again, be back in East Africa, but like not be worried that somebody is trying to kill me or these different things. So just the whole experience was just so, man, I wish I had the right word. It was just such an amazing opportunity. Like, I'm so thankful I raised my hand and said like, hey, Brett, I want to do this. And not thinking I would be selected, just such a cool opportunity.
What you mean selected? So not everyone who applies to do this race was selected or is going to be selected?
So the way because he had put out, he was looking for someone to come out and he would cover their race costs if they would promote it.
In this sense.
Yeah. And at the time, right, like I couldn't have afforded to do the race. I mean, the flights alone were nearly $2,000 just to get out there. So being selected was really just enough to offset everything that I needed to be able to go and have this experience.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I just misunderstood. Okay. I did understood that he covered the expenses of the race, but I thought it just selection process, but he did the selections for specific reason to get the person who can promote it and spread out the world of this amazing run experience on Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
Other than that, everybody who wants to do it, they can sign up, and that's it. There's no selection.
Correct. Yeah, he has so it's Red Knot Racing is the organization, and they just opened up registration for, they have like a multi-day race. So it's like 4 or 5 days, various distances each day. But like the registration just opened up for that. And like, I can't recommend enough, but between just the race, which was world class, but then just the people of Tanzania, the experience of being out there, like, my wife and I traveled a lot, and we came back from that one and we were like, this is probably the best trip we've ever taken. Even before the race, we were at the race village, right? We're one of 3 Americans that were there besides the race director. And we're hanging out with Brits and with people from, the Netherlands and India and Kenya and, local Tanzanians. And the guy that won my race was from Japan. And, just so cool. And the sun's going down. We have this like family style dinner. And my wife looks at me and she's like, hey, are there other races internationally you could do? And I was like, don't, like, let's go. Like there's races everywhere. Like, where do you want to go? I can find a race. So really just a really, really incredible experience for us both.
Well, it sounds definitely amazing. And as far as I understand this, let's say, second visit of East Africa as a civilian, you saw the other side of East Africa.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, there was a moment at the finish line with my wife, because like I said, I didn't know if I was going to finish in time. There was one point I was really concerned they were going to pull me off, off the course. Just there was a section at the end where there were elephants that would hang out. When it got dark, they got active, and for our safety, we had to be through there before nightfall. And I was able, like I said, to push through and I was able to finish. But my wife and I had this moment at the finish line where I just looked at her and I was like, hey, last time I left East Africa, I was not okay. I'm not going home that way this time. I'm okay. And like, let's go home the right way. Yeah, just for so many reasons, it was such a great trip.
Let's talk now about the Ironman. Have you already done this, or you're still preparing for the Ironman?
No, I'm still preparing. It's not until July, actually. So when I got back from Tanzania, as I typically do after a race, I go through a month or two where I don't really do anything. I kind of lay around, and it's not super intentional rest. Typically is just like, hey, I worked really hard to prepare for this race. I did this long, hard thing. I'm going to take some time. And when I do that, again, right, I talked about my addictive nature and we hadn't really talked about this yet, but I deal with depression. And if I'm not doing those hard things, it's kind of a dangerous space for me to be. And, and a lot of times my wife will look at me. There were a couple days right after Tanzania. She was like, go for a run. And I'd be like, no, I'm good. And she was like, I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling you, you haven't been running. Go leave the house. I've got the kids. Go for a run. So I'm looking around. I'm like, what am I going to do next? I haven't done a 100-miler yet. I've done a 100-kilometer race. I haven't done a 100-miler. And I was kind of thinking that would be next. And so I started kind of looking at races and which one do I want to do? I've got a couple in mind, thinking that they're local, easy courses, things like that. And I got an email from that Team Red, White, and Blue that you mentioned. They're a military veteran organization that really help veterans just like me who deal with an assortment of issues, but they use fiscal challenges really to support veterans. And the email came in and it was like, hey, do you want to do a triathlon? Fundraise with us and you can get in. And again, it was kind of one of those where like, I can't afford right now to do an Ironman. A full Ironman's about $1,000 just for the registration. But I saw an opportunity here to where I could sign up, I could go do a hard thing. So I get out of it what I need. And then I can fundraise to help other veterans who need to go do something hard so that they can do it through this organization, and carry on a legacy and do those different things. So, yep, I literally actually right before we hopped on, got my road bike finally. I didn't even own a bike. And I started putting it together, realized I didn't order pedals. So I have a bike, no pedals. So I got to figure that out later. But no, I haven't done it yet. I'm relearning to swim, all these things. But I very intentionally I saw Lake Placid was on the list. Not being a triathlete, I know about Lake Placid. And so I was like, immediately, that's the one I want to do. We had options on what we could enter. So I chose Lake Placid. And now the more I hear about it, people are like, it's the hardest bike out there. It's one of the hardest Ironmans, that you can do. So once again, I've kind of stepped in it where I've just signed up for something. No real understanding of what I'm getting myself into, but I've just said, yes, I need to do something hard for myself. I get to do this for others as well this time. And we're just going to figure it out.
Well, that's sounds exciting. For the listeners who might not know, Ironman competition is one of the most challenging as you total distance triathlon races in the world. Just to compare, this distance is 140.6 miles or 226.3 kilometers. And standard Olympic triathlon is only 32 miles or 51.5 kilometers long. So it's 4 times the Olympic triathlon. 4 times. It is a lot. Yes. This Ironman race, it takes place only in the US, or this July Ironman will take place in the US?
So they have them all over the world and they have them throughout the year. So, yeah, just kind of with the schedule, I saw an opportunity. Like my kids haven't really gone to any of my races yet, like none of my big ones. And I kind of saw an opportunity to like, hey, let's do a little family vacation. Let's go up there and do that. So that's partly why I selected that one. But yeah, they have them all over the world. You could find one just about anywhere, I think.
Oh, yeah. If anyone is interested, they can search in Google and sign up. And I also read that the finishing qualified athletes from the Ironman competition, from the local ones, will be selected for the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii.
Yes. Yeah. So not something I have my sights on, but yes, it is very cool that they do both the pros. So the professional triathletes can qualify to go to Kona and do that. But then they also have age groups. So whatever, probably in the 40 to 50 age group, finishing at a certain time, I could have the opportunity to go out to Kona, to Hawaii, and compete in the World Championships for the age group. Not something I will be doing, or, my goal is to finish. But for those out there that, are better athletes than I am, certainly it's a pretty cool thing that you can get involved with.
That's definitely it. Myself, I'm not a runner, but there are many people who like this sport, so it's a great opportunity for anyone who's interested to take part in any of the competitions. Yeah, you just need to learn how to run, to cycle, and to swim.
Yeah. So it is a lot, but I'm excited for it, and it'll be a good challenge for me for sure.
It sounds like this, and you still have a lot of months to get prepared to find the pedals for your bike.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that the race it's more than 6 months, but did they already told you how much time do they give the participants to finish it?
I want to say from the research I've done, you get roughly 18 hours. I want to say that's accurate. I've talked to a couple of them, like my running buddies who have done Ironmans before. Yeah. They're saying for someone like, maybe 13 to 15 hours is probably where my goal should be. So I think the big question mark right now is the bike. I do have a spin bike. It's one of those stationary exercise bikes that I got a little while ago just so I could do some additional cardio training without, and being able to keep my heart rate low like during the Florida summers. So I've been doing a lot of that biking, but it's been relatively easy, right? So it's just kind of getting used to the bike. I haven't started like real training where, again, simulating hills. I've heard this is one of the hillier bike courses that are out there for an Ironman. And here I am again in South Florida, 0 hills. So hopefully I can get a bike trainer here for the holidays, and then I can start to simulate some hills and do some like speed work and some different stuff. But again, I'm going to have to get creative with how I train for this thing to be able to not just finish, but have a decent time.
Yes, definitely. And from what I saw from professional athletes, usually many athletes who achieved high ranks, like they won first, second, or third place, they usually trained in very improvised places. It definitely shows it's one of the way for success in this sport.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of value in specificity of training. And I think that's whether it's, ultra running, marathons, triathlon, or just life, right? Just business or whatever you're doing, is finding ways to simulate, kind of real world or the conditions that you're going to be dealing with, and that was something I considered, right? Like, I think Ironman Texas was a possibility for me. Like, that was one of the ones I could enter. And that would have been, the biking and dealing with the heat, would have been super transferable for me. It would have been real easy to kind of simulate the same conditions that I train in to be, what Ironman Texas would be. But again, I saw Lake Placid. I know that's one of the big Ironmans of the year, and I couldn't help myself. I signed up before I looked at anything about the course or what I would have to adapt to in training, and just said, no, we're going full send, and we'll figure it out later.
And you will. I'm sure in this 7 months until the race, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
Definitely. Is there anything at the end of the episode you would like to say?
I think just for people that, as whether you're stuck or you're just dealing with things, right? You can't figure out how to get out of the cycle that you're in. For me, it was finding something new and different, challenging myself physically. But like you said, like it could literally just be anything. Or some of them maybe can't do physical things, but they just don't get the enjoyment out of it that I do. Find your thing, find that thing that you can devote energy to, forget about the problems for a little bit, or that you can work through those problems. I like to say left foot, right foot. It's just, when I'm in a race, things going tough, it's easy to stop, it's easy to sit, and if I can just keep moving just left foot, right foot, I know I'm going to finish.
Thanks for listening.